Hi, welcome to another edition of Jazz Smack, where tonight the Utah Jazz traveled to the Bay Area to play the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco. Keyonte George got the team off to a heck of a hot start. That first quarter was tremendous. Keyonte shot the ball super well. Jazz had a big lead in that first quarter. But, things didn't go their way in the second half. But you look at what Brice did tonight, which is awesome to see. Brice had a nice shooting game. Ace had another really good shooting game. So there were some nice things that some of the guys showed in this particular game. But let's look at something else too. Let's look at the overall competitiveness of this young Jazz team at home versus how they play on the road. So let's talk about that specifically.
Jazz Smack, NBA and Utah Jazz basketball.
So it was a good night for Keyonte. Played really well. He ended up shooting the ball really well for this game. He had some nice assist numbers. Terrific game by Keyonte. We certainly see growth with him. And one of the people that has struggled so far shooting the ball in this early season compared to how he ended last season was Brice. And Brice tonight, great game shooting the basketball. He goes 7 for 13. From the field, he scores 16 points. He was only a -6 in the plus minus for the game. So Brice, he also played 18 and a half minutes. A good game for Brice. I expect Brice to shoot the ball much better this season, at least where he ends this season, than how he has started the season. Because I know Brice is fully capable of doing more than he's done so far in this early season. I mean, he played really well in the Summer League. We saw him shoot the ball really well in the Summer League. We saw him shoot the ball really well to end last year. I think as the offensive side of the ball gets more straightened out with the Jazz, because they were so centered on the defense, as the offense gets more straightened out, that helps Brice. Brice isn't going to be a plus defender right now, but he can be a plus on the offensive side of the ball. So the more effort the Jazz coaching staff does on the offensive side of the ball, that benefits Brice and how he can contribute to the team. Now, yes, Brice still needs to play better defense, as do all the Jazz players. But offensively, the better the Jazz, the more attention the Jazz pay to that offensive side of the ball, that helps Brice immensely. And kind of the same situation with Ace in all reality. Ace is going to be better on the offensive side of the ball right now than he is on the defensive side of the ball. And so the more familiarity he gets with the offense, the more effort the Jazz coaching staff puts into the offensive side of the ball, that helps Ace. And Ace is looking, with each passing game, Ace looks better and better shooting the basketball. And tonight, again, he scores 21 points on 8 for 15 shooting. In the plus minus, he was -11. But, that's a decent number considering that the Jazz lost by 17. So Ace had a terrific game tonight, and we love seeing that. Now, from a team standpoint, we've seen the Utah Jazz play home games vastly more competitive so far this season than road games. At home, the Jazz are 4-5, 4 wins, 5 losses. On the road, the Jazz have 1 win and 7 losses. At home, the Jazz are a -0.1 points per game. On the road, the Jazz are a -15.8 points per game. So huge disparity there in the plus minus home versus road. Home, they're about even. On the road, they're minus a lot. But let's dig into this even further. Let's look at the offensive, points scored and the shooting percentages. So in points scored, the Utah Jazz at home score 128.4 points per game. On the road, the Jazz score 106.4 points per game. That is a massive disparity, a 22-point difference between the number of points scored at home versus road. I was expecting a significant difference. I did not expect that big of a difference before looking at these numbers. That is just monstrous. So let's dig into this even further and look at the shooting percentages. Let's look first at the field goal percentage. So at home, the Jazz shoot 46.8% from the field. On the road, the Jazz shoot 43% from the field. So a significant difference there, 3.8% between field goal percentage between home versus road. Significant, certainly. 3-point percentage. At home, the Jazz shoot 37.2% from the 3-point line. That's really good. That is a good number. Not a great number, but it's a good number. On the road, the Jazz shoot 28.7% from the 3-point line on average. So that gap is huge, home versus road. Now, even if we look at free throws, at home, 82.8% from the free throw line. On the road, 80.3%. So as you'd expect, from the 3-point line, the difference is the smallest. And before I looked at these numbers, this is what I kind of expected to see. I expected to see a significant gap in the 3-point percentage because the farther you are from the basket, the farther shots are, you expect that disparity between home and road to be the biggest. And that's where it is the biggest. Field goal percentage, significant, but not as big as the 3-point percentage. And then free throw percentage the closest together, but still a difference. This is what makes winning basketball games on the road. It doesn't matter if it's in the NBA, college, high school, whatever. The familiarity with your surroundings and shooting the basketball, I mean, it matters a great deal. I mean, and all basketball players, all teams go through this. It's much easier to shoot the ball in familiar surroundings than it is in unfamiliar surroundings. I've played, as most people who grew up playing like pickup basketball and stuff, even if you didn't play on any organized teams or anything, you've played in all these different facilities. Those of us that spend a lot of time in Utah, we've played in all these different churches. I'm sure that many of us have played at a bunch of different schools, high schools, middle schools, college campuses, and the recreational facilities on college campuses, even in college arenas. I know from my personal standpoint, my favorite shooting facility in the state of Utah is the Spectrum on Utah State campus. I think that facility is an awesome facility to shoot the ball in. I've played there a lot, and I like the court. I like the markings on the court. I like the basketball standards. I like the rims. I like the backdrop to those baskets. I mean, I think that is a fantastic facility to shoot the ball, and that is my favorite facility in the state of Utah. And everybody goes through this. This was the same way. It's the same way in the NBA. You have familiar surroundings, you're going to shoot the ball better at home. That's just the is. There are other factors in this too, obviously. There are home court advantages with the crowd. The Jazz have a massive home court advantage with their home crowd. You tend to get more calls at home from the referees than you do on the road. And with the Jazz have also, that hurts the opposing teams, is that elevation factor, which is a huge factor. The Jazz and Denver have that. No other teams in the NBA do have that. But fortunately for the Jazz and Denver, they have that because that is a massive problem for opposing teams and opposing players coming into Salt Lake and Denver. So these are things that make playing at home vastly easier than playing on the road. And this is why defense is so important. If you want to be a good road team and win games on the road, this is why that old saying, defense travels. This is where defense becomes really, really important. If you want to be a good road team, you got to defend. And that's why I commend Will Hardy for putting so much effort and emphasis on defense this young season, because for the Jazz to compete on the road, they have to play better defense. You just can't go on the road and expect to outscore your opponents because, quite frankly, that is a difficult task. It just is. You defend your way to being a good road team. First and foremost, defense travels. So I wanted to mention that. I wanted to go over those numbers because I found those numbers interesting. And, you kind of expect this with young teams. One of the things about young teams is, you get to, as you get older, you get more experienced, you learn to what it takes to win on the road. You learn that maybe a shot that you would take at home isn't the shot you take on the road. A shot that you think will go in at home, you may not think goes in on the road. So you might take, your shot selection might change a bit. All those things come into play. And this is where the Jazz are trying to not necessarily develop a team. I know Will Hardy is trying to win games right now. He's trying to get to a point where the team can be more competitive, and the team does need to be more competitive on the road because those road minutes in competitive games mean a lot more than if it's a blowout and it turns into garbage time in the third and fourth quarters. So, yes, it would be really nice if the Jazz could find a way to make the games more competitive. But still, the Jazz are a really young, developing team where a lot of the emphasis is on personal player development and not just team development. An older team like the Golden State Warriors are in a much different position where they aren't putting a huge amount of emphasis on player development. They're trying to get to a point where they can win games as a team. If the younger players, I know they obviously want Kuminga to play well. They want Moody to play well. They want Podziemski to play well. But, the bigger emphasis is on the team as a whole playing well because that is a really aging team. And, this may be like their last run at it realistically with Steph and Jimmy Butler. All those guys, they're getting old and they are in a different place than the Jazz, a much different place. And we all know the situation with the Jazz draft pick. We've talked about it a million times. So I found those numbers interesting. And quite frankly, it kind of, you look at those shooting percentages and the points scored, and it says a lot about how much the Jazz are struggling right now to shoot the ball on the road. But the Jazz have been super competitive so far at home, which is kind of what you expected, but we hope that continues. If the Jazz are that competitive at home throughout this season, it's going to make for some really exciting home games. And we just hope that the numbers improve somewhat on the road so that there aren't so many, just big losses, especially in the second half of those games. If they can make it just a bit more competitive so that they can get some more meaningful minutes out of those road games, I think that would be a heck of a lot better learning environment for all the young players. So I wanted to talk about that specifically in relation to, not just tonight's game in San Francisco, but all the road games that the Jazz have played so far and all the road games that are upcoming. Do I expect this trend to change significantly in the short term? Yeah, I kind of don't. I think that we hope that it changes, but I don't think it's going to change in the next week, in the next 2 weeks. I think there's going to be some more road woes, so to speak, in the short term compared to the long term. I just hope by, the second half of the season that the Jazz can be a bit more competitive in these road games compared to how this season has gone thus far with the negative 15.8 points per game average on the road. So let's just leave it at that for that particular topic. So getting back to tonight's game and the way they performed, again, defensively, the Jazz struggled some. And this is where they really still need to have a lot of emphasis. And we don't see a lot of improvement yet on the defensive end, as we talk about often. And the Warriors, again, shot 49% from the field tonight. They didn't shoot great from three, but they still shot 19 for 52, 36.5%, which isn't a great number, but it's also not a horrible number either. It's kind of just, I would say that's a mediocre home three-point shooting percentage for the Golden State Warriors. I didn't look at their numbers specifically. I concentrated on the Jazz, but I would assume that that's rather mediocre for this Golden State team. Clearly, Steph, with the way he shoots the ball, shooting at home, I would assume that his home three-point field goal percentage, just like we looked at with the Jazz, is significantly better than his road three-point percentage. And his numbers have been increasing in terms of how he's shooting the ball from three. But tonight, he didn't have a great night. I mean, Steph shot 6 for 17 from three tonight. So I commend the Jazz, too, for doing a decent job on Steph, because that's the one guy who can really kill you from deep on the Warriors. Because Moses Moody has decent three-point percentages, but obviously he's not the danger that Steph is from shooting three. So I commend the Jazz for doing well there. They played a defense. I mean, Steph scored a lot of points tonight, but that 6 for 17 from three, I think that the Jazz did a decent job there, and that's to be commended. So again, overall, I was pleased with Brice. I was happy to see him shoot the ball so well. Keyonte had a great night. Ace had a terrific night. And there were some positives in the first half. It just didn't, they just couldn't hold it together to make it really competitive down the stretch. And Lowry did not have a great night tonight, going 6 for 19. So one of the things I think we want to look at moving forward is we want to take a look at some of these numbers for the individual players and see how they play home versus road as well, and not just the team as a whole, but we want to just look at the individual players and see if there's a great disparity. I mean, there's going to be a disparity, but how much does it compare for individual players in how they play home versus road? Because that will definitely be interesting to see. And I would expect that the older players, there's not a big of a disparity as it is for the younger players, because experience means a ton in this league. You just can't, there is no short-term fix to the lack of experience. And that's one of the things that the Jazz are going through right now that they still need to work out, obviously. Get the young guys experience. So we'll see what happens. But it was an interesting game, and we will kind of leave it with that for this evening. And please, for those watching on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow us on X at Jazz Smack, and we will talk to everybody later.